The sun burned red like a dying coal, hanging low on the horizon as Tumelo herded the cattle home. The herd moved quietly through the dry yellow grass, their bells clinking softly in the vast, open plain. The boy, thin, tightly curled hair, wearing a faded earth-toned shirt with a frayed collar, held a stick in one hand and a small leather pouch sewn by his mother in the other. He was always the last to leave the grazing fields, always the one who stayed the longest. Every day, Tumelo led the cattle past the edge of the forest, and every day he knew something lived there. Not buffalo, not hyena, not human. It was a gray-gold shape, usually lying motionless under the shadow of a thorn bush, eyes shut, mane matted like scorched grass, shoulder blades sharp beneath thin skin, a lone male lion. He'd heard the adults speak of it, a cursed ghost of the wild, a night-eating spirit, but none had seen it clearly. They said it once broke into a goat pen, then vanished. But Tumelo saw it almost every week, just lying there, not roaring, not hunting, just breathing, like wind brushing over hot sand. And somehow he wasn't afraid. It wasn't trust. It wasn't even curiosity, just a quiet familiarity, like the sound of wind through the thatched roof at night, part of the land, wild but not threatening. That evening, as he guided the herd across a low ridge, Tumelo heard a strange sound from the brush beyond the rise. Not wind, not a small animal. A roar, low and hoarse, then rising into a violent, bone-chilling bellow. The grass flattened, birds scattered, wings flapping furiously from thorny bushes. The cattle spread out, agitated, jostling each other. Tumelo pulled them back, hiding behind a low acacia tree. He dropped flat, pressing his body to the earth, breath shallow and shaky. Through the leaves he saw something he'd never seen before. A male lion, the very same that always lay still beneath the thorns, was fighting a pack of hyenas. 4, 5, then 6. Mottled skin, pale eyes, snarling mouths pulled wide. They circled. The lion roared ferociously, backed up, then suddenly lunged at the lead hyena, clawing its face and making the whole pack hesitate. But they didn't retreat. They knew something. They knew the lion had a weakness. They spread out, flanking him. The lion fought back wildly, slashing, swiping, but his blows were off, like he couldn't see clearly. One hyena latched onto his hind leg. The lion buckled, blood spraying from his thigh. The pack swarmed, snarls, screeches. A cloud of dust rose around them. Tumelo covered his mouth. He didn't know if he was shaking from fear or sorrow. His mind went blank. His heart pounded like war drums. One thought echoed faintly in his head. Why is he alone? Then, the hyenas pulled back. A final guttural roar shook the air. Through the drifting dust, the lion stood barely. His front paw dragged. Then he collapsed. His fur was caked with blood, mud-red dust. A fresh scar stretched from his forehead down across his left eye, still bleeding. That eye was shut tight. The other remained open, but unfocused, staring into nothing. He breathed, trembling, no longer roaring. Tumelo lay hidden in the brush for a long time. He didn't know why he didn't run. He just watched the lion sit, slowly dragging himself toward the shadows. A creature that was once the king of this land, now breathing like something too tired to keep going. When it disappeared into the thicket, Tumelo finally stood. He herded the cattle away quickly, but his mind kept circling back to that image, that eye. Not seeing clearly, not focused on anything, but somehow seeing straight through him. A blind gaze, aching with pain. Near the village edge, Tumelo stopped. He opened his cloth pouch, pulling out a piece of dried meat, what his mother gave him for long days. He held it for a long time, looked at it, smelled it, then gripped it tightly. Night fell fast. The moon rose thin as a fingernail. When the villagers had finished dinner, when cooking fires began to fade, Tumelo quietly returned to the brush. He didn't know what he was doing, only that his legs moved and his heart led the way. The grass was damp with dew, no sounds but crickets and distant owl calls. Near the edge of the thicket where the lion usually lay, he placed the meat on a flat stone, then stepped back, 3 paces. He stood there, staring into the darkness. He saw nothing, heard nothing, but his heart still beat loud in his chest. Then he turned and ran. No words, no reason. Just, for the first time, he didn't run away. Something in that empty stare had made it impossible to turn his back. Dawn on the savanna isn't a moment, it's a slow turning. The sky shifts from purple to gray, then to a pale, milky silver, before the first light of sun pours gold across the grass, now dulled by dust. Tumelo sat on the old stone near the forest's edge, his legs swinging gently in the morning mist. The cold wind brushed his cheeks, but inside he felt a strange warmth, not from the air, but from something he hadn't yet found the words for. He had left a piece of meat the night before, and this morning the stone was empty. No meat, no blood, no human tracks, only a faint scratch in the dirt and a few pale yellow hairs caught in the grass. Tumelo's heart jumped. He didn't know if he should feel happy or sad. He only knew one thing: it was still alive. In the days that followed, he began carrying a bit of meat whenever he passed the thorn brush with the cattle. Not every day he left it, and not every day did the lion eat. Some days he found the meat swarmed by ants, dried stiff under the sun. Other days it was half gone, dragged a short distance. Still, he kept at it, regularly, like a habit that hadn't found its name yet. He didn't tell anyone, not because he was scared, but because there were no words that felt enough. One time he hid behind dry grass, waiting. He sat for a long time until the sun began to lean west, and then he saw it, the lion, approaching slowly from the distance. Its walk was unsteady, a limp in its step, its head swaying slightly. When it reached the stone, it sniffed the air, lowered its head, and ate, slowly, cautiously, bite by bite. It didn't look around, didn't flinch at bird calls or rustling leaves. It just ate, then turned and walked away. That was when Tumelo noticed neither of its eyes were truly seeing. The left eye was bruised and swollen shut, a deep scar running from forehead to lid, nearly sealing it. But the right eye, though open, had no focus, as if it looked through everything. That night, Tumelo couldn't sleep. He tossed beneath his blanket, his head empty, then flooded with images. He remembered that look, that blank stare, and the way it didn't even twitch at birds, the way it walked like every step feared thorns. After that, Tumelo stopped hiding. He would leave the meat and sit farther away, behind a nearby tree. He didn't call out, didn't move closer. But each time the lion ate, it would pause halfway through and lift its head toward where Tumelo sat. As if it heard something, he began to whistle, softly. Just a hazy little tune with no real shape, but steady. The lion never reacted, never walked away either. It stayed, a quiet kind of acceptance. Day by day it became a rhythm. Then one day, while light rain was falling, Tumelo was about to set down the meat when he slipped. A dry branch cracked sharply beneath him. He fell hard, sand spraying his face. For a second he was sure he'd die. But the lion did nothing. It stood still. Ears flicked slightly. Then it turned away. And in that moment, Tumelo understood. It couldn't see him. It had gone completely blind. And from that day on, his fear vanished. A week later, Tumelo left the meat and didn't back away. He sat just a few yards away. The lion came as usual, sniffed the air around him, then the meat, and ate. What do you think about this story? If you found it interesting, comment good. If you weren't satisfied, type 1. And if you have your own opinion, feel free to share it in the comments section. Don't forget to hit subscribe to support the channel. It's completely free, but means so much to me. Thank you very much. The wind blew, lifting Tumelo's hair and rustling the lion's mane. And for a moment, the two of them simply existed in the same breeze. Not boy, not beast, not threat, not fear. For the first time, he gave it a name, Tau, lion, in Sotho. Not to call it, not to claim it, but because when something stays near you long enough, you want to call it something. It never responded. But every time Tumelo whistled, Tau would turn its head toward the sound. A kind of signal, a kind of bond. One day, when Tumelo arrived later than usual, Tau wasn't at the stone. He thought it had gone. But when he sat down and gave his 3 soft whistles, Tau emerged from the brush, slowly walking toward the sound. Tumelo held his breath. Tau stepped to the stone, sniffed around as if searching for meat, then lay down. Didn't eat, didn't roar. Just lay there, facing Tumelo like a breathing boulder. Tumelo sat with him for a long time. He wondered, did Tau know who he was? Did he know the one who came each day? Or did he only sense the smell, the sound, the gentle echo of something familiar in a world gone completely dark? He didn't know. All he knew was, every time Tumelo came, Tau was there. Not for food, not for survival, but for something else, something quiet. As if in the darkness where nothing had shape anymore, Tumelo was the last thing that still did. No one taught him how to befriend a lion, but he did, not with hands, not with words, with presence and trust. The wind had shifted. The dry scent of earth and cow dung now carried a harsher tang, the scorched red dust smell of the savanna. Tumelo had started to notice it during recent herding trips. The days were hotter, the cattle didn't roam as far, but what unsettled him most didn't come from the sky or the soil. It came from people. They had started talking about it. The lion. It was near the clearing again. Someone heard it roaring last night. A cow's gone missing. Bet it snuck out again. Tumelo heard it all, silently. His heart beat a strange rhythm every time the word lion left an adult's mouth. They didn't know the truth. It couldn't hunt. It couldn't see. It only lived on breath and the dry scraps Tumelo left behind. But the adults didn't care about truth. They cared about protecting the herd. One evening, as Tumelo returned from the grasslands, he saw a few men gathered beneath the big tamarind tree in the village, checking their rifles. One was an old hunting gun, rusty from years of disuse. One held a dry torch. A fierce dog lay chained nearby. Beside them stood Mosa, the oldest, crankiest herdsman in the area. "We'll go at first light," Mosa said. "I bet it's still near the thorn brush. It's old, won't be hard to take down." Tumelo walked past. No one noticed him, but in his mind, the whole village was on fire. That night, when his mother asked why he wasn't eating, Tumelo just shook his head. His mouth was dry. His hands clutched the corner of his cloth bag like he could squeeze his fear into something solid. Later, when the fire was out and the village had fallen silent, Tumelo crept out of the hut. He stuffed a few pieces of dried meat and a pouch of water into his bag, then slipped into the dark. No stick, no lantern, only the sound of crickets and the crunch of dust underfoot. For the first time, he wasn't afraid of the dark. He was afraid of something worse, losing Tao. He reached the familiar stone and gave 3 soft whistles. The wind passed through, carrying a scent he knew. From behind the brush, Tao stepped out, slow, cautious, but clearly recognizing the sound. Tumelo sat down, leaned close, his mouth near the lion's ear torn slightly from an old battle. "They're coming," he whispered. "Tomorrow, with guns." The lion didn't move, but something shifted. Tumelo could feel it. Its posture tightened, its ears twitched harder. Though blind, it could read Tumelo's breath, and the fear soaked into every word. He kept speaking as if to himself. "I have to get you out, farther. It's not safe here anymore." That night, Tumelo led the lion away. No map, no light, only sound. He whistled short bursts. 1 note meant turn right, 2 to keep going, 3 to stop. Tao followed, step by step, through tall grass brushing their chests, through thorny acacia that snagged their clothes, across a shallow creek where sharp rocks tore at their feet. At times, Tumelo thought he wouldn't make it. At times, Tao paused, panting, head low. Tumelo knelt, pressed his hand into the lion's mane, wet, cold, tangled with dew and dust. "Keep going," he whispered, voice raw. "We're close." There was no moon, only stars, and the sound of 2 souls walking together. By dawn, they reached an open glade, deep in the forest, where few people ever came. A place Tumelo had once stumbled upon as a child, where the trees cast shade all day, where a shallow spring whispered year-round. The grass was sparse, but soft enough to lie on. No one came here. No one needed to. Tumelo let Tao settle. He poured water into his cupped hands. The lion drank. The wind was crisp. Dew clung to the lion's fur, sparkling like salt. Tumelo laid out his jacket and sat beside him. His heart still pounded, afraid someone had followed them. But there was only wind and slow, steady breathing beside him. For the first time, Tumelo leaned his head on Tao's belly and slept. When he woke, the sky was pale with morning. Tao still lay there, head resting on his paws, still, breathing. Tumelo stood, circled the glade. He found stones, used a branch to brush away tracks, made fake trails leading toward the creek, so if someone searched, they'd go the wrong way. He came back, laid a few blades of grass on Tao's back, maybe for shade, maybe just to do something, for a friend. That morning, the village was in chaos. They couldn't find the lion. They searched the forest edge and found a few old prints, then lost the trail near the rocks. Mosa grumbled that maybe the beast had died or been killed by another. Tumelo heard the stories. He just nodded, didn't say a word. No one guessed that the quietest boy in the village was the one who had led the monster away from the hands of men. From that day on, he stopped leaving meat at the stone. and he didn't return there again, because his old friend had followed him to a place with no guns, where fear couldn't reach them. A place where he and it could exist without needing anyone to understand. The southern forest was a place few people ever went. There were no trails, no cattle tracks, just tall reeds towering over your head, scattered acacia trees, and the soft trickle of a stream winding through stone. Tumelo chose a dip in the land near the water as the place to stop. No one told him to. No one helped him. But every day after herding the cattle, he came back, quietly, as if it was simply something that had to be done. He built a small shelter with tree branches, lined it with dry leaves, and placed a flat stone to use as a table for the meat. No fences, no chains, nothing to trap, but also nothing to protect. He knew, if Tao wanted to leave, he could, but he stayed. Every day when Tumelo arrived, Tao was there, lying under the tree's shade, lifting his head at the sound of that familiar whistle. His blind eyes stayed half closed, but his head turned to the exact direction. He couldn't see, but he knew. Tumelo brought water, bits of meat, and a few healing herbs his grandfather had taught him to find. He wasn't a healer, but he learned quickly. He knew how to boil leaves into a wash for wounds, how to sprinkle fine ash into scratches to dry them out, how to use his hands, small but steady, to wipe the dust from Tao's thick, tangled coat. Slowly, Tao began to stand. At first, it was just a few shaky steps, then slow loops around the stream. Once, Tumelo caught him soaking his paws in the water, resting his head on a cool stone. What do you think about this story? If you found it interesting, comment good. If you weren't satisfied, type 1. And if you have your own opinion, feel free to share it in the comments section. Don't forget to hit subscribe to support the channel. It's completely free, but means so much to me. Thank you very much. His back was still scarred, but his walk was steadier now. A creature with no sight, beginning to live again. On misty mornings, Tumelo sat reading old books his grandfather had left behind. One time, he read a bit of a folktale aloud. Suddenly, he heard a low rumble behind him, like a sigh. He turned to see Tao sitting just behind him. No growl, no movement forward, just sitting, as if listening. Tumelo smiled, closed the book, and said quietly, "I'm not a great reader." Tao didn't leave. Another day, heavy rain had delayed Tumelo. Mud reached halfway up his legs, and his shirt clung with fallen leaves. He thought Tao might have found shelter elsewhere. But no. He was still there, soaked, fur matted, curled tight under the tree like he'd been waiting. When Tumelo approached, Tao lifted his head, nostrils twitching to catch the familiar scent. Tumelo quickly pulled out a dry cloth from his bag, knelt, and began wiping the wet fur from Tao's brow. For the first time, Tao didn't pull away. Every afternoon, Tumelo came at the same hour. Rain or sun or strong wind, he still brought meat. He still whistled. And every time he reached the bend in the path, saw the grass bent by lion tracks, his heart eased a little. Tao was still there. That was enough. He never called him a friend. He didn't reach out to touch him every day. But when Tumelo sat alone by the stream, reading, hearing the wind move through the trees, with the steady breath of something large behind him, he knew he was not alone. One afternoon, he lay beside Tao, listening to the lion's heartbeat, slow and deep, each beat like a drum echoing from the earth. He placed his hand on Tao's chest, his hand barely the size of one shoulder blade, and closed his eyes. "You don't have to see me," Tumelo thought. "Just know I'm here." A breeze passed through. No answer. But there was a sigh, warm and deep, like the voice of the land. One sunset, the kind Tumelo would never forget. Tao lay by the edge of the stream, head resting on his usual stone. The sky burned red through the leaves, and his fur shimmered like bronzed fire. Tumelo sat beside him, telling stories. About the time he got in trouble for coming home after dark, about the cow that gave birth right in the middle of the field, about how he hated learning letters but loved drawing maps with sticks in the dirt. He spoke like he was talking to himself, but Tao stayed, listening, in his own way. As the evening ended, Tumelo whispered, "I can't come tomorrow, but I'll be back soon." Tao didn't respond, but he didn't leave either. Tumelo kept it a secret. Everyone in the village thought the lion was long dead. Mosa never brought it up again. His grandfather just looked at Tumelo once, long and steady, then nodded. Didn't ask, didn't stop him. As if he knew, there are some things you have to decide for yourself. Keep for yourself, grow up for. Time passed. Each day, Tumelo came back before sunset. He didn't cage Tao. He didn't tie him down. But every morning, Tao was still there, by the tree, by the stream, in the shade. Some afternoons, Tumelo just read his book. Tao would lie nearby, listening to the water flow. They didn't bother each other. No need for touch, no need for words. But between them, something had formed. Something words couldn't quite touch. A silence, like a shelter made of red earth. Not built from leaves or wood, but trust. The dry season arrived quietly. No more sudden rains. No more small puddles around tree roots. The grass started to gray. The soil cracked faintly. The wind carried red dust and a distant scent of something fading. Tumelo sensed the change, not from nature, but from the emptiness in his familiar corner of the forest. That morning, he arrived earlier than usual, but no one was there. No fresh paw prints, no breathing sounds, no stray hairs on the stone. The rock where Tao used to lie was bare. Dry leaves covered the ground, untouched. The wind passed through, hollow. He stood still, didn't call, didn't whistle, just stood there, letting the wind dry whatever it was that had started to rise in his chest. He walked the area, traced faint signs only his eyes knew how to see. A few broken branches, a patch of soft earth by the stream. Then, footprints. Large, deep, fresh, pressed into the fine layer of dust leading northwest toward those blue-tinged hills he once pointed to and said, "That's the preserve. No one hunts there." His heart beat faster, not out of fear but understanding. Tao was strong enough now to leave, and it had chosen to go. That afternoon, Tumelo returned to the stone and sat for a long time, not waiting, not hoping, just sitting, as if to quietly close something. From his pocket, he pulled out a small notebook, worn pages his grandfather once used for writing down herbal remedies. Tumelo wrote a single line, "Thank you for not being afraid of me." He tore the page out, folded it, and tucked it into a crack in the stone, not for anyone to see, not hoping anyone would read it. Just in case Tao ever came back, maybe it could smell something familiar. Weeks passed. Tumelo visited more often. He saw nothing. He heard nothing. The dry season had fully arrived. The trees shed their leaves, the stream thinned to a trickle. Still, he came, bringing water, a bit of shade, and something unspoken. Every time, he laid an old cloth on the stone, not to wipe it down, not for any reason, just habit, as if his presence needed a place to rest. One day, as the wind blew stronger than usual, he sat watching leaves scatter across the path. Then, through the dust, he saw a faint print in the grass, not clear, but definitely not human. His heart squeezed tight. A fragile hope burst like a soap bubble. And then, one morning, Tumelo led the cattle across the southern ridge to check the pasture. The sun was still low. Mist hung like smoke. He paused. His heart stuttered. Through the haze stood a large, dark shape, still as stone. He held his breath. It didn't move. But that shape, the way its head tilted slightly, how its body leaned with the wind, was unmistakable. He didn't call out, didn't step forward. He just stood, gripping his stick like it was the only thing keeping him steady. The wind shifted. The shape turned its head. The left eye, as always, was closed. The right didn't aim at him, but the entire body, in that moment, felt like it was looking straight into the boy's soul. No voice, no proof needed. It was him. A gust of wind swept past. When Tumelo blinked away the dust, the shape was gone. He didn't chase, didn't shout its name, didn't run after it. He only bowed his head and smiled. He understood now. Some things don't need to stay to still be present. Some encounters aren't meant to be kept, just remembered, just known that once you were seen. Once you were trusted. That night, he sat alone by the fire. Didn't speak to anyone. Just took out his notebook and wrote on the very last page, "I once sat beside a lion who couldn't see, and I never felt lonely. I never touched it, but it touched a part of me no one else ever had. And if someone ever asks me if I've met a monster, I'll nod. Then I'll say, no, it wasn't a monster, it was Tao." He closed the notebook and placed it by the window. Outside, the night held no moon, only dust and wind. Beyond the veil of some distant morning mist, the blind lion still walks through the forest. No leash, no cage, no one watching. And somewhere, at the edge of the savanna, a boy still looks back now and then, just to be sure. It's still out there. And if you ask him, he'll say, "It doesn't need to see me. It just needs to know I once sat beside it."